I'm Priscilla Barrera with the Investing News Network, and here with me today is Emily Hersh, who's CEO of Luna Lithium. Emily, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, Priscilla. It's really good to see you here in Phoenix, Arizona.
Yes, and we are back at an in-person conference. I just wanted to start by asking you, how are you finding sentiment in the industry so far, and what have been some major highlights from the event for you?
Good question. So the lithium industry right now is, I would say that from a sentiment standpoint, interested parties and people who are willing to talk to and talk about lithium are growing a lot faster than supply. And so while for those of us who have been in the industry for a long time, there are things that we know and understand, we're definitely as an industry in a position of needing to build a bigger tent and bring more people in and explain and teach and find places where new entrants to the sector can provide value and help the lithium industry grow.
And you're now the CEO of Luna Lithium. I wanted you to share a little bit with our investor audience about this journey from watching and analyzing the market to getting involved in exploring and developing a lithium project.
Yeah, so I am the CEO of Luna Lithium. Luna is currently a private company, and we're a lithium exploration company with a geographic focus on the western United States. And our first project is a sediment-hosted brine target in Nevada. I've been a member or a participant, I guess, of the lithium industry since about 2013. And I reached a sort of crossroads where I was sharing a lot of, I'll call them snotty, sometimes opinions about the need to build a U.S. domestic lithium-ion battery supply chain and the need for countries to either make a choice that we're just going to buy everything from China, and that's fine, or take decisions to go down a different path and have a broader set of opportunities. The exploration portion of the lithium story has always been the thing I enjoy the most, because while I am not a geologist, I love the rocks, and I love understanding the stories of the rocks and how different geologic formations lend themselves to different extraction methods. And so I took a decision in about August of 2020 to stop complaining that the U.S. didn't have a domestic battery materials, critical mineral supply chain, and come up here and put my money and the folks who believe in me's money behind trying to make it happen. So it's been an exciting journey so far, but I think it's still quite early days.
And why Nevada, and I guess why now?
Nevada has some of the most interesting lithium geology, I would say, in the world, and it's fundamentally not understood yet. So a lot of the historic lithium production, especially in the United States, was undertaken by chemical companies. And so they didn't really go out and try to understand a geologic formation and look for specific types of lithium geologies. They simply knew there was lithium somewhere and worked on a processing plan or a processing flow sheet to get it out. Nevada is located kind of in the heart of where a lot of the infrastructure, or the more, I guess, is it upstream or downstream? I always mix those up. But the steps further along the battery supply chain when it comes to making active cathode materials and doing battery manufacturing and assembly, those pieces are coming into place in areas that make the logistics of moving material from Nevada to a customer a very attractive place to be doing exploration. So it's got the rocks, it's got the right infrastructure, and it's got the right pieces.
Now, speaking from a junior mining company perspective, what would you say is the biggest challenge any new entrant faces?
Junior mining is really hard. So mineral exploration and running a junior mining company is a lot of things happening at the same time. And so there's a lot of noise in terms of what's happening in the market. You really can't control what market conditions are going to be at any given point in time. Prices are volatile. People are emotional. And then when you're doing early stage exploration, there's a lot of unknowns and a lot of uncertainty when it comes to doing and putting together exploration programs. So I think the most challenging thing is that, especially in the United States, this isn't a country with a rich mining history or a rich mineral exploration sector. And so it's not like working in somewhere like Chile or Peru, where there's 50,000 service providers. And it's not like me in Argentina, where I know 80% of the market. You know, I'm maybe from the US, but I've never felt more foreign in my life.
And since you're now mostly focused on the US, I wanted to touch on security of supply chains and what the pandemic has taught us. What do you think is the number one lesson countries like the US should take away from this season?
Countries like the US in particular, should have experienced a very sharp wake-up call that things come from materials. And if you don't have access to materials, you can't have the things. I don't think the U.S. is moving as quickly or as decisively as I believe they should when it comes to putting together the pieces to have a domestic supply chain. And I'm not saying domestic and no imports or exports, right? I don't favor autarky. But I do think that the U.S. keeps running into the same problem and not putting solutions in place. It's like, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. The U.S. has experienced supply chain shortages related to raw materials, manufactured goods. And if we run into a world where scarcity becomes more of a dilemma, if China owns the means of production and the supply chains go through China, they will choose China first, and the U.S. will miss out. And so I'm not a patient person by any means, and I'm trying to look to the increasing policy support for building out strong domestic supply chains as a good step in the right direction. But I am here to try to make it go faster.
And what do you think the U.S. Is getting right in this build out of its supply chains? And where do you see areas of opportunities for the country?
I like that the battery manufacturing and the active material manufacturing onshoring process seems to be happening pretty quickly. So you've got the LG Chems, insert Korean battery company name because it's late in the day and my brain's not functioning. You've got folks like Tesla, Redwood, Li-Cycle, looking at parts of battery making, parts of active material making. And so I think that part of the story is moving forward, and I think that the federal government is getting behind understanding how to start putting some lower cost capital into building some of these processing facilities as well as some of the extraction. You know, that said, the U.S., I think, could take a look in the mirror and think about what the word leadership means, because you've got, a Department of Energy saying we want to be leaders in this energy transition. We want to be leaders in the supply chain. The supply chain starts with mining. And if a country says, right, we're leaders in this, but we won't let it happen here, we want it to happen overseas, that's not leadership, that's hypocrisy. And hypocrisy is not a long-term position that typically garners respect or encourages folks to follow or participate.
Now, most analysts, and we've been hearing about this at the event, will agree that we will need more supply coming online in the next decade to fill these needs of the energy transition. But an area that I wanted to get your insight is on sustainability, which is a big theme here as well. Now, you were part of a panel. There was a question on whether you see consumers paying a premium for lithium extracted in a sustainable way. What are your thoughts on this? And I guess the whole ESG theme as it relates to junior mining.
I may be jaded, but I don't think even the most staunchly pro-ESG consumer, when it comes down to it, will actually pay more for an iPhone that's sustainably sourced. The same people who are out protesting mines will the next day talk about the deals that they got at Best Buy. And so, okay. That said, I do think that a large amount of capital and pools of capital are coming together and converging around ESG themes. And what I think that means is that projects that are able to adhere to certain standards of sustainability, certain standards of social justice, and certain standards of community and governance will be able to access capital at a much lower cost of capital, which will in turn create financial incentives for companies to go down that path.
And I'm also interested in hearing your thoughts on expertise and human resources. How do you think this will impact the growth in this market?
There are a lot of companies and a lot of players chasing few experts, and experience is something that is, it's in short supply. That said, and I think John Evans captured this well, the CEO of Lithium America was on the same panel, that a lot of the people that they're bringing in are not industry veterans, but they're young people who want to learn, who possess the basic skill sets. And I think that I'll count myself as an expert, although I'm sure you could find a couple of experts who would disagree with that, but I'm not a novice, right? But I think that we that possess some degree of knowledge on this industry need to build a culture where we're building a bigger tent, right? And teach and bring people up the learning curve and encourage bringing more in, because the further someone goes down their road of expertise, it's almost the less likely it is that they will listen to somebody who possesses relevant expertise and work together to solve a problem. And so we're all working together to solve a puzzle, and generating that kind of build a bigger tent, bring people up attitude, I think goes a long way.
When looking at what's ahead for lithium, what excites you the most about this space?
I think that figuring out the deposit models for the geology of how lithium is deposited in the western United States and other places is really what excites me. When I got into lithium after a bit of experience in gold, the gold industry, the geology behind gold deposits has been around for hundreds of years. Whereas the lithium industry we're still figuring out why we find lithium deposits of certain characteristics in certain places. And so that's the part I like the most. I mean, my investors would probably prefer that I was excited about the tremendous supply-demand mismatch and the super cycle that we're in. And that excites me too. But I think that the ability to be part of the massive growth in understanding and figuring out how to unlock lithium deposits is something that is, it's the story of a lifetime.
Emily, and my last question for you today, I wanted to ask you about the time from now until 2025. And if you could briefly describe and explain to our investor audience, what do you expect to see from now until then?
Chaos. No, and I'm serious, because you've got lithium spot prices that are ridiculous. You've got the majority of folks who are investing in lithium who don't understand that the majority of lithium does not trade on said spot price. You've got supply-demand fundamentals for lithium that are like, right, we have an undersupply for the better part of the next decade. But we're also about to go into a recession, or we're going into a recession. And when there's a recession, interest rates go up, things slow down. I mean, there's the hodgepodge of macroeconomic events upon which the growth of the lithium industry is taking place on. Very hard to predict, right? I think that the lithium fundamentals are so sound and so key, but what happens if, because of this current panic that's going on, the Chinese and the other battery makers or cathode makers are stockpiling lithium chemicals, and we see a slowdown in just the economy writ large. People buy fewer cars in a slowdown, and so if some of that builds even into a little glut, and then that hits the markets, and then the spot price goes down even just a bit, that's going to be Wall Street Journal headlines. It's like, lithium crashes, and then everyone's going to freak out and everyone's going to panic, and we'll all do it again. So I'm quite comfortable in the lithium space. I think we're in the beginning of a lithium super cycle, of a battery super cycle, right? But I do think the next couple of years are going to be chaotic, and that's, it's challenging. We're in a period of interest rates and inflation that our generations, well, you and me with our Argentine experience, are like, this is Diet Coke inflation, right? Like, this isn't inflation, y'all. Try 60%. But this is a macroeconomic setting that most people have not encountered in their lives, and macroeconomic instability makes people act crazy. So I think we're going to have some chaos that folks who keep cool heads and stay the course, you're going to make a lot of money off of.
All right, Emily, thank you so much for joining me today.
Anytime, Priscilla.